Hi, and welcome back to the EPCC Culinary Arts Chef Share Sessions. I'm Chef Rosser with you again. This week we're going to be talking about stocks. So what are stocks? Well, stocks are flavorful cooking liquids that we're going to use as bases for soups, sauces, and the like. We're going to use them as poaching liquids, ingredients to adjust consistency, add richness, body, and flavor to other items. So why stocks? Well, there's a lot of good reasons to have stocks in a professional kitchen because they add flavor to other ingredients, right? So if I'm going to make a rice pilaf, rather than just using water as the liquid base, if I use chicken stock, I'm going to enrich that pilaf. It's going to be a better product at the end, and it's going to have a beautiful aroma of chicken. So we use stocks every day in the professional kitchen, and what I want to go through with you guys today is a myriad of stocks. So we're going to start with a basic, simple vegetable stock. We're going to move through that to fish fumet, which is not strictly a stock, but not a stock. So you'll see when we start preparing that. We're going to make a white chicken stock. We're going to make lobster stock, and we're going to make a brown veal stock. So we've got a lot of stuff going on today. The first thing I want to talk to you guys about is this table that I've got set up here with all of my ingredients. So what I have here is what is known as standard mirepoix, and this is just a mixture of celery, carrots, and onion, and it's 50% onions, 25% celery, 25% carrots. So the ratio is 2-1-1, and this is used throughout the culinary world, especially in classical French cooking. There are variations to the mirepoix, and we're going to do a white mirepoix for our fish fumet, which is going to include leeks, parsnips, and some mushroom trim. I've also got here a little fennel bulb that we're going to add to our vegetable stock and our lobster stock. So really what we're doing is focusing on the aromatics of these vegetables to bring flavor and color to some of these stocks. We're going to use some tomatoes in the veg stock. We're going to use a little lemon in the fish fumet, as well as white wine. So I wanted to have this spread here for you so that we could talk about ingredients, what they bring to the equation. Things like tomatoes are going to bring acidity and brightness to certain items. We're going to use fresh tomatoes, but we're also going to use tomato paste in the darker stocks like the lobster stock and the veal stock, and that tomato paste is we're going to roast that in to those products, and that is what is known as a pincée, and that's going to add a lot of body, flavor, and color, that richness and depth that we're going to be looking for from the finished product. Other items that we're going to be using are a standard sachet de pis, and this is, I've got a couple of them open for you. They're fairly large, but this contains parsley stems, bay leaves, fresh thyme, and peppercorns. And this is a standard aromatic package that we're going to put in all stocks. I've got these on cheesecloth that has been rinsed and folded over, and I've got a few others that are already tied, and we did these in large coffee filters. So these are really good ways to bring flavor to the equation. And now as we go through each stock, I will be talking about the ingredients, the procedures, the length of cooking, what the ratio should be between bones and water and mirepoix or aromatics. We'll be talking about particular ingredients, parsnips and leeks. These are a couple of really great earthy ingredients to use. Parsnips are the root of a parsley plant, cultivated especially to get a nice meaty root out of. And these have a sweet, earthy flavor. Leeks have this beautiful aromatic quality. They're in the onion family. They look like a large green onion. But for stocks, you want to use the darker green part, and you can use the white part. For if you're cooking with them to eat them, you only want to use the lighter part. So we're going to use whole leeks, and then fennel bulbs. We've got some here chopped up. These have a wonderful anisette flavor to them, so that kind of licorice quality, and we're going to like to see that in the vegetable stock preparation as well as the lobster stock. So we're pairing aromatic vegetables with ingredients to get the best qualities out of both of them with that finished stock. And when we have these finished stocks, We can, like I said, we can use them as bases for stocks, soups, as ingredients to cook other items, and on and on. So we're gonna go ahead and get started with vegetable stock first, and we'll be right back with that. So the first stock that we're gonna do is a simple stock or a veg stock. So what I've got here is my mirepoix. I've got about 5 pounds of mirepoix, and I've started putting some tomatoes in there. And these are just Roma tomatoes, they're commercially available. One thing that I like to do with these Roma tomatoes, I like to cut them in half and squeeze the seeds out. The seeds tend to be a little bitter and add extra water to it. We typically don't want that in stocks and sauces. So I just like always squeezing out the tomato seeds. You can strain that and make a tomato water out of that. But for this purpose, I really don't want the bitterness of the seeds in there. I want the aromatic qualities and the acidity from the tomatoes to do the work in this particular application. So I've got that. I've also got some mushroom trim, and I'm going to add about 8 ounces of that. So I've got my mushroom trim. I'm also going to add my leeks, just for some extra aromatic quality. And leeks are just amazing ingredients. If you're not familiar with them, you can use them like an onion. And I'm going to put a little bit of my fennel bulb in there just to kind of sweeten this up. It'll give it a nice aromatic quality. All right. So all of this is going to go into my stock pot, and we've got these really nice spigoted pots over here, which are great for straining. This may not be really practical for the home cook, but these are invaluable as far as the commercial side when you're making stocks and the like. So I'm going to get all of this in there, as well as my sachet, and this is one of the coffee filter ones. We've got this on a nice long string. I'm going to tie that to the handle of the pot so that I don't have to go fishing for that later. And I'm going to add water. And I'm going to try to get about 5 gallons of water in here. And as far as cooking things like vegetable stock, this needs to cook for 45 minutes to an hour. That's all it takes for these vegetables to give up their magic and really flavor the stock. And a veg stock would be great for any kind of vegetarian cooking components, things like that. These are really invaluable tools in the kitchen. I would always rather use a flavorful stock than straight water to add to something, to adjust consistency, to create a soup base or a sauce base, rather just because of the fact that I've taken the time to get that flavor in there, and I want to use that product to its fullest. There's a few basic principles that I want to talk to you guys about stocks. My philosophy when it comes to stock making is garbage in, garbage out. I don't want to use vegetables or products in my stock that are on their way out. If I have the choice of either put it in the trash can or make a stock out of it, I'll just go ahead and put it in the trash can, just because of the fact that whatever goes into a stock needs to be wholesome, just like you would put it on a plate. So garbage in, garbage out. Also, there's a few things that you want to be very careful of when you're preparing stocks. Let me hang this back up. When preparing stocks, there's a few things you want to avoid. And I call it the ABCs of stock. So with the ABCs of stock, it's agitate, boil, cover. Those are 3 things you never want to do. Agitate means stir, especially if you have protein bones in there, chicken bones, beef bones, whatever the case is. That can cause the stock to become cloudy and murky. So once you have it on and you start your heat, don't stir it, right? Cover or boil. You don't want to bring it to a boil. That will create a murky stock as well. So you won't have that nice clear, crystal clear complexion of the stock like you should have. If you boil it, and you'll get too much protein in the water and so on. And cover. If you cover a pot it's going to tend to raise the temperature in there, and it's really hard to monitor, so you don't want to cover them. Also, seasoning, ABCS, seasoning. We don't want to add any salt to this, because oftentimes what we do with stock preparations is reduce them down, and if you add a little bit of salt in the beginning, once you reduce that stock down, it can be way too salty. So you want to do that after you've prepared your stock. Then you want to season it as you need for whatever application you're using that stock for. So I've got my cold water in there, I've got my sachet, all of my ingredients. I'm going to turn this on. I want to bring this to a simmer between 185 and 205 degrees, and this is going to cook for about an hour after that happens. We'll come back and take a look at that when it's done. Next, we're going to move on to fish fumet. So the next stock preparation that we're going to do is actually a fish fumet. And the fumet is going to be a little different from a straightforward stock preparation in that we're going to saute or sweat our ingredients. We're also going to add some acidity to this with lemon and white wine. We're going to use a white mirepoix, and I've got this right here, and that is 25% parsnips, 25% celery, 25% onions, and 25% leeks. I've got all this in here, and I'm going to add a little bit of mushroom trim to that just for the aromatic quality. And then what we have here is some nice, clean, high quality halibut collars. They're very meaty, and they have a lot of bone structure on there. And we also have some clean fish bones from our own tilapia that we grow here at the college. So we had some of those left over from preparation, so we're going to get those in there too. Now this is another quick stock. It's only going to take about 45 minutes, but we need to start with the saute process. So the first thing I'm going to do is get some clarified butter into my stock pot, get that warm. And we don't want to brown this stuff, we just want to sweat it to bring out the aromatic qualities. So I'm going to get a little clarified butter down there, melt that out. I'll add my fish bones and collars. And we're gonna, that's about enough. I got about a cup of clarified butter in there, which is plenty. And we'll skim that off later. Got a nice long spatula so I can reach all the way down in there. And the operation that we're doing once we start sweating these out, we're going to smother this stock, which means we're going to partially cover it. And yes, I know it's breaking rules, but what we want to do is extract as much of these aromatic qualities out of here in the shortest time possible. And these fish fumets make really great bases for fish-based sauces. So if I wanted to make a fish veloute, a fumet would be great. If I wanted to poach some fish, having a fumet available would be amazing. So as soon as this clarified butter just melts down and just make sure you don't get it too hot, we're going to start getting our fish product in there and our white mirepoix. And we're going to make quite a bit of stock because I've got quite a bit of bones. I've got about 12 pounds of bones here. They're fairly heavy because the halibuts are really large, dense fish, and I've got half of a head in here as well. So these are really heavy bones, and we want to make sure that we use them correctly. All right. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. Our fish bones are going to come in, and I don't want to drop them in. I'm going to treat them nicely. Gonna get all of that in there, and then we're going to just start stirring that. All right, I'm gonna get my mirepoix in there. Adjust my heat. There we go, nice and low now. And just sweat that stuff out. Now these bones are really heavy, so you got to really get under them to get this part moving. We want to just get everything mixed in there. And we're just going to let that soften up nicely. Got a little heat on that initially, and it's just where we want it. And now we're just going to let these sweat out, and I'm going to smother them next. Let me find my lid, and we'll get that process done. So I've got my bones, my mirepoix. I put a little mushroom trim in there. These things are just on nice and low. I want to make sure everything's mixed, and then I'm going to put my cover on, and this is the sweating part. It's just a loose fitting cover. I'm going to come and check this every few minutes. We want that steam to penetrate these items and start breaking them down and extracting flavor. I'm also going to add a little bit of wine and some lemon to this. So I've got about a cup and a half of white wine. I'm going to let that steam with that, and I'm going to get 2 lemons in there and just squeeze those in really quickly and recover it and let that sweat continue. And this is going to give me some beautiful bright acidity and a complex flavor at the end. Let these go. I'll give it a stir a couple times. Then we're going to fill this with water and bring it to a simmer. Remember, 185 to 205 for about an hour, and we'll come back and take a look at it. So our fish fumet has been smothering for about 10 minutes, and let's open that up. We get a nice gentle waft of steam. Again, this is one of those times when I wish we had smell-o-vision, just because it smells amazing. And if you can see down in here, those fish heads and the bones, they're starting to break down, and you can smell the wine and the lemon and the aromatics. So I just want to give this a little bit of a stir. Look at how everything's progressing. So at this point, it has smothered sufficiently. Those aromatic vegetables are starting to break down a little bit. They're softening up, and that's really what we need. So that clarified butter, the white wine, the lemon juice, all of our aromatic vegetables, they're doing their job. At this point, it's time to fill this guy up with water, and we have our stock hose handy in the kitchen, so we're going to go ahead and do that. And I'm not going to add too much water. I'm going to fill it about halfway. So I'm going to about 4 gallons of water for this amount of fish bones, and we will have a really beautiful stock. Now on the down shot, if you can see down in here, you can see the butter, and it's kind of cloudy as it's filling up. So this, again, we're not looking for clarity in this stock. We're looking to really bring flavor to this stock with those aromatic qualities and the wine. So this will be a little bit of a murky stock, and that's okay because we know what we're making. This will be a great poaching stock for fish. It'll make a great fish veloute if we needed to make a sauce for something else. So this is going to be amazing, and it already smells terrific. And I'm also going to get my sachet in there as well. So I'm just going to fill it to about the handles. I'll leave a little room in there. After that, I'll partially cover it. I'm not going to cover it completely because I don't want the temperature in there to get too high, and that way I can monitor it. And we're just about done. All right, so I've got my measure of water in there, get my sachet in there, tie it to the handle, and we're going to let this go. Now remember, we don't start the clock on the cooking until this comes up to temperature. So for this volume of water, Bringing it up to 185 to 205 is going to take a little bit of time. However, the cooking, once it reaches that temp, the cooking is fairly quick. We're looking at 45 minutes to an hour. Same thing with the vegetable stock and the lobster stock that we're going to do later. But there are preparation steps ahead of that. Next, we're going to move on to chicken stock, and we're going to make a white chicken stock as opposed to a dark chicken stock. So we'll talk about that in just a minute. The next stock objective we're going to do is a white chicken stock. Now here I've got about 40 pounds of chicken carcasses and bones. Now these are commercially available from food service providers, and I know not everybody is going to make 40-pound batches. However, if you save chicken bones at home, put them in the freezer, you get enough, you make a batch of nice stock. What's going to make this a white stock is that we are going to blanch these bones. And by blanching, what I mean is that we're going to put them in the steam-jacketed kettle with cold water. We're going to bring that to a boil. We're going to shut it off, drain that water off, and then we're going to start them again in cold water with our aromatic vegetables. So we have a nice, light, pale stock that is crystal clear. We'll get started on that in just a second. So I've got my chicken bones in the kettle with clean cold water. I'm going to turn it up to 10 now. I just want to bring this to a boil. Then I'm going to drain this water out. And what that does is it helps pull the impurities and excess fat out of this chicken. Then I'm going to fill it again with clean cold water. And I'm going to add my aromatic vegetables and our sachet, and we'll leave this on. Now this is a really big batch. This thing holds about 15 gallons. So this one is going to take quite a while. This one we'll probably leave it for about 12 hours, nice and low, and then we'll take a look at this tomorrow. We'll come back in a minute when we drain this out and add our clean cold water and aromatics. This next stock objective that we're going to make is lobster stock. So what we bought here is a 30-pound case of lobster bodies. And this is what's left over from lobster processing. So it's the thorax of the lobster with the legs. We've thawed these out, we've drained them, and now we're going to grind them up. So I've got them in a mixer, in the commercial mixer with the paddle attachment. And I need to break them into smaller pieces because what I'm going to do is roast them. And I want to, the reason we do this, and it's kind of gross, but it's functional, we're going to try to extract every bit of flavor out of these bones so that we get a nice product. So I turn on my mixer and it just breaks down those shells. Now I could do this with shrimp shells or crab bodies as well. Lobster has a very distinct flavor, so we're going to use that. And I'm just going to let this go for a minute just to break those shells down so we get the maximum amount of flavor. Then, to intensify that flavor, we're going to roast these in the oven. All right. I'm going to stop it. I'm going to put on speed 2 for just a second to finish that. And that is it. And here I have one that is already done, if you want to take a look at that. So it looks like a gooey mess, but really by doing this, we're going to be able to extract more flavor out of this and have a nicer finished product. All right, we're going to go ahead and get these in a roasting pan and in our oven. We'll check that out in just a second. Okay, so our water here is just about to come to a boil. So I'm going to shut it off at this point because these bones have been blanched. You can see all the impurities and fat that have floated up to the top of the steam jacketed kettle. And that's what we're trying to do. We're going to get all of these impurities off. So first thing I'm going to do is drain this. I'm going to shut it off. I'm going to drain it. And then I'm going to rinse these bones off. And then I'm going to refill this with cold water, add our mirepoix, our sachet, and then this is going to go for about another 8 to 12 hours. All right? Are you rolling? Okay, so I'm rinsing the bones off, getting excess fat and impurities off. And I'll rinse them just a little more, and then we'll get this batch started. And what this is going to do for our stock is it's going to give us a nice pale or clear stock that doesn't have a lot of color, but it'll also be nice and clear and have that really nice chicken flavor. Rinse everything off really well. There we go. Let that drain out. I can tilt my kettle forward a little bit. Now I'm going to add our sachet and our mirepoix. Fill this up with cold, clean water. Turn it back on. Get it to 185 to 205 and let this go for about 8 to 12 hours. And we'll take a look at this tomorrow. Welcome back. So our chicken stock has gone overnight in our steam jacketed kettle, and we're going to take a look at it after we drain it and before we cool it. I've got all of this mirepoix and chicken bones. The great thing about this steam jacketed kettle is it's got the bottom spout that I can drain from, and it's going to hold back a lot of that particulate that's in there. So when I open this, and I'm going to do this very carefully because this has been going overnight, it's really, really hot, and I just want to kind of gently let that out. I don't want it splashing everywhere. But if you can, and we'll take a look at this a little closer in a minute, but we've got a nice, clear, consistent chicken stock. It's not crystal clear, but we can fix that. We're making sure we strain it through a fine mesh strainer, and then we're going to cool it, and we'll go through the cooling process in just a little bit. So I'm going to turn this off now, and I'm going to hold up what I've taken out of the kettle already. And we have this really nice, just neutrally colored, it smells amazing. And this is a great neutral meat stock or chicken stock to make sauces and soup bases out of. This is about 15 gallons of chicken stock. This will go a long way. So this will last us maybe 6 weeks. With our lab objectives and our restaurant objectives, depending on what kind of business we have. So it's definitely worth the investment if you can prepare a proper stock and utilize it within your restaurant setting. And for the home cooks, having stock is really going to enrich anything that you use it in. We're going to keep straining this. We'll take a look at cooling it later. But next, we're going to look at our veal stock, which has gone overnight. And then we're going to do what's known as a remoulage, which is a second wetting of the bones, or a remi. We'll check that out in just a second. Our vegetable stock has been simmering now for 45 minutes to an hour. It's time to drain it. That's what I love these pots for. So I'm just going to start this drain like that. And let me stop that real quickly so we can take a look at this. It's very clear. There's not a lot of particles in there. And we can strain it again. I'll strain it again after I cool it, but I'm going to drain it first, get it cooled, strain it, and then put it away. So that's veg stock. Our fish fumet has now been going for 45 minutes to an hour as well. I'm going to strain this. I'm going to use this piece of equipment. It's a fine mesh strainer. It's known as a chinois. uh, and this is going to help remove particles. Now, like I said, this is going to be a bit of a murky stock, but it's still going to be amazing. I can smell it, and it's awesome. I'll get enough in here for you guys to take a look at, and I'll stop the pour, and we can take a look at evaluation. All right, shut that off. And we've got this kind of murky looking stock, but it smells amazing and it's got wonderful flavor to it. So we'll keep finishing draining this, and we will put it on ice to cool down, and then we'll put it away and use it for a host of different ingredients. Okay, so our lobster bodies are ground up. I've got them in these large, shallow roasting pans. I'm going to roast them in the oven for a little bit to start developing some color and flavor on them. Then I'm going to bring them out, add our aromatic vegetables and tomato paste, and that's known as a pincé. We'll take a look at that in a minute once these start cooking. My oven is really high, 450 degrees, and this shouldn't take too long, especially in thin layers like that. So we'll come back in a few minutes, take a look at that, and then do our pincé with the tomato paste and our aromatic. The next stock objective we're going to work on is veal stock, and this is going to be a brown veal stock, so we're going to roast these bones down. Now you see these bones, these are what is known as veal knuckle bones. We prefer veal over beef because it's still growing. There's a lot of connective tissue and cartilage, which is going to end up giving our stock a lot of body. To make it a brown stock, we're going to roast this product off, much like we did with the lobster bones. We're going to put it in a 450 degree oven. We're going to develop some color. Then we're going to add our mirepoix, which is our aromatic vegetables, and some tomato paste. And if you'll remember, that's the pincé. So we're going to get these started in our 450 degree oven. Those are heavy. All right, let's check our lobster bones. All right, that's exactly what we're looking for. I'm going to do one tray of these at a time. We're wanting these to get dried out and start that cooking. So at this point, I'm going to stir them up a little bit. And we're going to put our aromatic vegetables in there. And they smell great. We're going to put half of this in there. I'm going to put a little bit of fennel bulb in there. And some leeks. I'm also going to put some tomato paste in there. And this is going to give it a really nice depth of color and flavor. And this is that pincé we've been talking about. So I'm going to just stir everything up. I'm going to put it back in the oven to roast. I'll get out my other tray, do the same thing. And in about 10 minutes, these will go in some cold, clean water, and we can put this on to cook. So I want to get everything distributed nicely in there. That's why I did such a shallow layer of the lobster bones in such a large pan, because when you do this, you need a little bit of room to stir and get everything moving. All right, so that step is done for that pan. I'll get the other pan out, and we'll take a look at this in a little bit. So our lobster bones have been roasting in here for about 20 minutes with the tomato paste and aromatics. Let's take a look at these. Give the pan a shake so everything comes off nicely. And there we've developed some nice color. I don't want these to get too dark, but I want to get that color developed. I'm going to get these out into my pot, fill it with water, and then bring it to a simmer and cook it for about 45 minutes to an hour. Now, this oven was at 450, so we got to be real careful doing this. And I can use a little white wine to deglaze this pan, get all of that flavor and color off of the bottom of the pan, and really get all that flavor back into that stock.
We'll come back and take a look at this after it's simmered for about an hour. So our veal bones have been in this oven for about 30 minutes at 500 degrees, 450 to 500. You just want a really high temperature. You want to get that oven sear on them. Let's take a look at these. All right, so they're browning really nicely. At this point, I'm going to add some aromatics and do the pincé just like we did with our lobster stock. And so I'm just going to get my tomato product and kind of smear it onto all over this. I just kind of paint these bones, and then I'm going to get my aromatics in there and kind of stir everything up. I just want to paint these up. And this tomato product is going to give a really nice depth of color and flavor. And we'll take a look at these tomorrow when they come out. Now these veal bones, they need to cook overnight in the water. This is really important because they're such a large, heavy bone. We need to give them enough time. We want to extract all of that connective tissue and flavor from the cartilage and the meat and the bones itself. So this is a really great way. You hardly ever see restaurants doing this anymore because this is expensive and time consuming. I've got that on there. I'm going to get some of my aromatics in. And we're going to continue roasting this. I'm just going to give everything a quick turn. Just kind of jostle everything around, make sure nothing's sticking. Get those aromatics down in there. Yeah, it's working nice. There we go. Let's get those vegetables worked down under there. Let this go together for probably another 30 minutes. Just develop that really nice, deep, beautiful color. And then we'll come back and put these in the water to simmer. All right? Get them back in and get my other tray out. Our veal bones have been in the oven for about 40 minutes now, total 45 at 450 to 500 degrees. We've got a lot of nice color on them. They're getting dark and roasty. Let's take a look at them, and we're going to put them in these pots. All right, so let's take a look at these guys. We've developed a lot of nice color, and that pincé has worked beautifully. The vegetables have started to roast. These are really bulky bones. I could leave them in there for a little bit longer to get some of that more of that tomato paste cooked down, but we're still gonna have a nice dark stock at the end of this. So I'm gonna start getting these in our stock pots. This is such a large batch that I need to split it into 2 large stock pots because remember I've got my chicken stock in my large steam jacketed kettle. Tomorrow, since these are gonna cook overnight, tomorrow after we take a look at this stock and strain it and cool it, we can re-wet these bones, and that's known as a remoulage. We'll talk a little bit about that tomorrow when we take a look at this stock. And these bones are super expensive because this makes the best stock. At this point, after I get my aromatics in there, what I can do with this pan is deglaze it. I could use red wine. I'm just going to use some water because I want to try to get all of the fond, which is this burnt on, stuck on product on the bottom. I want to get that off because there's a lot of flavor and color in that I want to get into my stock. So I'll show you the deglazing process really quickly. Push that to the back. I'll turn my burner on nice and low. And I'm going to get some water in that pan and get all that baked on, stuck on veal juice off of there. Now you're never going to get it all off, but making the effort to get some of it off is really important. Turn on the flame. And as this water heats up over that burner, it's going to help me unstick a lot of that product down in there. I did the same thing with the lobster stock as well. I'm just going to let this heat up and scrape it with this spatula. You don't want to use a metal spoon. It tends to scratch the pans up. So the rubber spatula will work fine as long as you've got it on the burner. The heating of the water will help unstick that stuff. And this just takes a little bit of time, but it's worth the effort because you can see all the color we've developed in that water so far, and that's just after a minute. Okay, so I've been deglazing this pan, and I've been able to get a lot of that fond off of the bottom. There's still some stuck on there. I don't need to chase everything, but you'll see we've got a lot of product in there now. It's nice and soupy, and there's a lot of color and flavor in that. So I'm just going to go ahead and get this into my stock pot, and then we're going to fill it with clean cold water. And get that started. So this needs to stay on overnight. We'll come back in the morning and take a look at this. Next, we're going to take a look at our veal bones and the stock that we've made from those. Now this stuff has cooked for 24 hours at this point. Before I show you the stock itself, I want to go through a procedure for skimming the surface, removing some impurities and fats. Now if you can see the top of this, you'll see there's a thin layer of fat that floats to the top along with proteins in the water, and it kind of forms a scum on top. So what I like to do is get a container of hot water, a 2-ounce ladle, and just let that stuff leak into my ladle and pull it out and rinse my ladle in the hot water, and you'll see the fat and the skim comes right off of the top. And by doing this, what we're going to end up with is a cleaner product in the end. Now I may have to clean it up a little bit more after it cools. If there's extra fat in there, it might coagulate on the top, and then it's easy to scrape off. But I want to get the bulk of that off before I strain and cool this product, just so that it's a nicer, cleaner product. So this degreasing and skimming the top is a really important step. One reason I want to do this is because I'm going to make a second wetting of these bones. These are big, heavy bones, and they're rather expensive. So what I want to do with them, after I strain the stock off and put it to cool, is I'm going to add more mirepoix, or those aromatic vegetables, to this, and I'm going to get another stock preparation out of this. So these will be done tomorrow. It's not going to give me as strong a stock with the same amount of body, but there's still some magic left in these bones because of all the connective tissue that's there. It's like I said, it's going to give me a bit weaker stock, but I can use that stock in soup and sauce preparations. It's really nice to reduce that sauce down by about half and strengthen it, and it's perfectly acceptable to do that in the restaurants. Just because to get your money's worth, because right here we're probably going to yield about 10 gallons of stock, so we want to get every penny back out of this stock that we can. So I'll hold this up for the camera. Look at the amount of fat and impurities that I've been able to pull off of there. And it's really important to do that as much as you can before you strain your stocks, because not only do we want to get the fat off because we don't want to add that to our stock, but we want to get those impurities out that may cloud up our finished product and keep it from being the best it can be. So skimming, degreasing, super important step. All right, so next I'm going to go ahead and start straining these. These bones are a little heavy, it's a little hot, so I'm going to work on that. We're going to come back and evaluate all 5 stocks that we've made. We'll take a look at them side by side. We'll talk about their characteristics. And then finally, I'm going to go through the cooling and storage process with you. It's very important to cool down items properly, especially when we're spending the investment of money and time that we're putting into stocks. Making sure that they are cooled down and handled properly is vital. We don't want to get anybody sick, and we don't want to throw away our money that we spent on good product, especially with that investment of time. So we'll come back and take a look at that. All right. Okay, so we are back. We've got all our 5 stock preparations here, and we're going to talk real briefly about what we've done over the course of the last day in making these stocks. So we have our vegetable stock, and this is very light and neutral. This is not going to have any body, and by body what I mean is that kind of mouth feel, the gelatin, where we're going to see the most of that is down here with the veal stock. So veg stock is a great all-purpose liquid addition to things like rice, potatoes, soup bases, sauces. Very neutral with that really nice vegetable intensity, but a great all-around kind of stock preparation. Remember, the next one is our fish fumet. Now this is a little more specialized, but what we got out of this, and if we look at it in profile, we can see that it's kind of murky, like I said, and we've got a little bit of that clarified butter and some particulate in there. And there's not a problem with that at all, because this has really got a good bouquet to it. It's got a wonderful aroma, that very light, fresh, clean fish flavor from the bones, and then all those beautiful aromatics that we put in there could really bring this all together. And then we have that brightness and acidity from the white wine and the lemon. So this is a really beautiful stock to use for sauces to accompany fishes. You can use it for poaching, all kinds of uses for this. This one, a little more labor intensive, a little more specialized. Moving on, we have our lobster stock. Now look at the deep color that we achieved with that from roasting those lobster shells and then doing the pincé with that tomato paste. It doesn't turn it red. We get that really nice browning effect. This has a wonderful aroma of just faintly of shellfish. And we're going to make a beautiful lobster bisque out of this. We can make lobster sauces. This is a great shellfish base to use for many other preparations. Moving on, we're going to look at this chicken stock. This white chicken stock, fairly neutral. It's still warm. We just pulled it off. I just wanted to show you for evaluation. It's not crystal clear, but we can fix that if we do a consommé preparation on this. But this is another great neutral stock that I would put in the category with the veg stock over here. Great all-around sauce or stock for sauces, soups, what have you. And then finally here, this is definitely going to be the most expensive of the stocks that we did, and this is that dark veal stock. Remember those veal knuckle bones that we got? They are full of connective tissue, so once this cools, it's going to be fairly gelatinous. So if I wanted to make a demi-glace, this would be my go-to base for that. And we've done other chefs share videos on sauces, and this would be combined with an espagnole, or to make an espagnole and then a reduction of this to make a demi-glace. It's a little complicated, but it's definitely worth the try. But this veal stock is just amazing. It's got a real nice body to it because all of that connective tissue breaks down in the stock preparation, the elastin and collagen form gelatin in the presence of water, and once this cools down, it's going to be semi-solid, and this will be a great stock to use to make those kind of hearty sauces that you really want to spend the time and attention to make. And if you don't start with a great stock, you're never going to have a great sauce. The next thing we're going to look at is cooling our stocks down properly and handling them so that you get the best life out of them and you avoid any safety and sanitation hazards that may arise. So we're going to prepare an ice bath and chill these down. Okay, so we're here in a different kitchen because I have plenty of room to cool these down. What I'm doing in these two large sinks is preparing an ice bath, and that's simply ice and water. I'm going to get my stocks in there, and you'll notice that I've changed them out from a plastic container into metal pots. Metal is a more efficient conductor of heat. I need to get these cooled down as quickly as possible. Now I could use a blast chiller, but I'm going to use the old-fashioned method because this is easy to do at home. It's commonly done in the restaurants. The important part about cooling these things down is you want to get them down to 70 degrees within 4 hours. And this is a large pot. This is about 5 gallons or more in here. So getting that down to 70 degrees is going to take some time. I'll have to change the ice out if I need to, but 70 degrees within 4 hours, and then within 2 hours of that, you need to get it down to 40 degrees or below. And that way we're going to maintain minimum safety standards of cooling these products to avoid any bacterial growth or contamination. Now, when you're doing this kind of thing, you want to make sure that you're not working in the area, you're not going to drop anything in there. Get it done fast. Don't cover these until they're completely cooled. You cover them, you're going to trap the heat in there. So to handle them carefully, you're investing a lot of time and money into these products. Get them cooled properly. If you're making smaller batches, what you can do is freeze them in ice trays. Have stock frozen as ice cubes. Quart containers, Ziploc bags. However you need to break it down is fine, because oftentimes you don't need 5 gallons of stock at a time. So that's exactly what we do. We break it down into 1 quart containers and freeze them. Works great for us, and we get the longest shelf life out of this we can. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and drop this in my ice bath. I want to come back through, re-ice as necessary, and stir frequently. So there we go. Enjoy stock making.